Hello? Am I too late for the Q&A?
Yeah, but you're just in time for the T&A.
What's good, people? Agent Juice reporting for duty. Whenever I do this Velicia cosplay series and I talk about the villains that she is cosplaying as, I always analyze what kind of villain is the villain in question. I've had many villains on this series. I've had villains who are unabashedly evil, villains who are not necessarily world-dominating forces, but rather just sly rogues. I have villains who are very, very insecure and use their villainy as some kind of emotional cover or whatnot, which is usually the one closest to my own character, Velicia. But I don't think I've yet to cover a villain who doesn't think herself a villain, because today I'm going to be covering such a villain, and that is Mystique. Without further ado, let's go ahead and buckle into our favorite setting where there are mutants. Let us go ahead and strip down butt naked. Let us use our naked powers to turn into people with clothing, which is probably the reason why in the movies that she's shown naked. Let us use our crazy lizard ninja girl powers to kick the like button. And let's get on into discovering what the deuce this is all about. Alrighty. So, as per usual, we first acknowledge the speed paint. The speed paint, of course, is my OC Velicia, this time cosplaying as Mystique. And specifically, I'm using the aforementioned naked version of Mystique because that's, let's be real here, it's the most famous version. Mostly because it was in the films, but, I mean, come on. If anyone's going to draw a version of Mystique, which one do you think they're going to draw? This actual specific pose is in reference to the second X-Men movie, where Mystique is infiltrating the secret base that William Stryker has taken Professor X into to do his nefarious scheme, and so she's breaking in and stuff, and, you know, she's doing her lizard woman super ninja gymnastics nonsense, and there's a scene where, like, she slips out through one of the closing doors and flips the bird, and so that's the reference I'm doing here in this particular picture. So like I said before, there are multiple versions of Mystique. I'm going to be drawing, mostly for the sake of this conversation, from not only the naked Mystique, but also kind of the 90s version and the newer version with Katniss Everdeen, the actress for that. I'm pretty sure I'll put it up here on the screen because it's escaping me right now. Anyway, that version of Mystique is much more characterized. One thing that Mystique has going for her that is the connecting theme to all these versions is that she does not think she is the bad guy. She is, in her own ways, fighting for mutant rights, you know, because that's the kind of the point of X-Men, right? It was this allegory for fighting for civil rights because, of course, the series came to fruition around the 60s, which was during the actual civil rights movement. So it made sense to kind of make like an allegory to a prod and poke at it. And of course, you have two sides of this civil rights movement. You have the more peaceable mutants who are led, of course, by Professor X, and these are the X-Men. And then you have, I believe they're called the Brotherhood of Mutants, which is, of course, led by Magneto. And they're much more violent about getting their mutant rights. And in fact, some of them even believe in mutant supremacy. And the funny thing about mutant supremacy is, in kind of a dark, twisted way, they're kind of right. Because racial supremacy doesn't really make sense because beyond, physical appearance, and I would say negligible actual existing biological physical differences. Key word I use there is negligible. It's negligible. We still have, as a human right, an equal opportunity to do what we wish, as long as it, doesn't harm people. But mutants are literal super-powered beings, okay? There's a difference between, me being slightly more brown than a white man, and me being slightly more brown than a white man, and I also can shoot laser beams from my eyes and fly through the sky and teleport. That is a clear distinction. So, even though I would, of course, side with the good guys, right? I would side with the X-Men and say everyone has rights to sovereignty. The Brotherhood of Mutants kind of have an unfortunate point to their mutant supremacy because they are literally like humans but better. So I can kind of see where Mystique is coming from in this. What is Mystique's villainy? What is she doing that is bad? Well, I'm going to draw from the 90s cartoon X-Men because there's a very specific scene that kind of perfectly describes Mystique's modus operandi. There's a scene where, in an episode where Nightcrawler is trying to confront Mystique, and for those of you plebeians who don't know, Nightcrawler is actually the son of Mystique.
Your father was an Austrian count. Not handsome, but his money made up for that. We led a life of luxury. That is, until I gave birth to a mutant son. The neighbors were not pleased.
And that is when you abandoned me.
My shameful secret had been revealed. The would-be countess was a mutant. I had to start over. You were inconvenient. I suppose you hate me for that.
No. But I am sad for you.
Sad? You want to talk about sad? I am a shapeshifter, an outcast, even among mutants trusted by no one. I don't have a life of my own. I just steal little bits from other people's lives. But that's how I survive. So there's your truth, son. I didn't want you.
You can see, though, using the 90s cartoon iteration of Mystique, that she is also very much willing to do whatever it takes to survive, okay? She was willing to abandon her own child if it meant continuing to survive. And that in and of itself can be seen as an act of evil. The things that she is willing to do, the evil she is willing to commit, the harm she is willing to do upon another innocent being, one of which is her own child, kind of shows her thought process, right? Where she's going with all of this. And even though she is someone who wants to survive and someone who may want to see mutant rights, she ultimately is still on the side of those who would subjugate and harm innocents, right? Thus, making her as a villain as far as normal people are concerned. So what does all this have to do with Velicia? What can Velicia learn from these iterations of Mystique? Well, there are some iterations that she can take parts from and other iterations that are kind of the opposite. In this series, I described that there are essentially two types of villains. One that Velicia is like, and villains that she is not just not like, but would actually make interesting foils to Velicia, so I need to make other characters. I think ultimately Mystique falls into the latter category, that she would be a character that would make an interesting foil to Velicia. Now, the small interesting thing that Mystique and Velicia kind of sort of have in common is the weaponization of the femme fatale shtick. Because in the version that I'm drawing, specifically, it is the version of Mystique from the original 2000s movies of X-Men, where she kind of has the least amount of lines, you know? She's just there to look good and, kick ass in crazy, suggestive poses and walk around naked. That, of course, is a very femme fatale move. Now, I was going to compare that version of Mystique to other kind of like the puckish rogues, such as, Catwoman and Rouge the Bat, who are characters that I've drawn Velicia cosplaying as before. But Mystique is not like that because she doesn't do this solely for personal gain. Yes, I know in the 90s cartoon example thingy I showed that she was very much willing to survive, which is a very selfish thing, but it's not like she's doing it for personal gain, right? She's not doing it for gems and jewels and riches and to live, I was about to say to live a hedonistic lifestyle, which technically she did when she gave up Nightcrawler, but in the movie, not the cartoon, the movies, the 2000 movies, she is helping Magneto, which is the Brotherhood of, I almost said Brotherhood of Steel there. I've been playing Fallout. Brotherhood of mutants who are about the freedom fighting thing, so it shows that she's willing to fight for a greater cause. That is not like Velicia. Velicia is not interested in a greater cause. She doesn't. She sees herself as the bad guy, right? The thesis of this particular video is that Mystique does not see herself as a villain. She does not. I was going to say twirl her mustache. She doesn't have a mustache, so I guess the female equivalent is the what's the evil woman Japanese laugh where they put their hand to the side and go oh ho 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 like that. That would be like the equivalent of the mustache twirl. So she's not cheekily laughing in a rich way as she commits evil deeds. She may kind of, put on like a pretty, like literally change her face into a pretty face. Not to say that she doesn't have good facial structure in her blue form, but I'm saying like, if she wants to do that trick where she seduces a security guard to jab him full of iron, she'll put on a pretty face, right? She'll do some demure stuff. She'll do the femme fatale thing, but it's for a goal, right? It's a goal for what she believes is greater good, and Velicia is not like that. She specifically wants to be a villain because it looks good on her. So, On the surface level, skin deep, ironically, which is Mystique's power, right? To be skin deep, to change her skin, is ultimately what she does have in common with Velicia, because, you know, it is a tool. Not only is it a tool to commit evil, but it's a trope. That's kind of the big thing about Velicia. She loves her tropes, her evil laugh, her evil lair, her evil magic. Mystique is she's like the Russian spy, you know, the sexy Russian spy from James Bond, where she has long cigarettes and she has a low-cut dress where you can see her large ICBM warheads, right? That's Mystique, but it's for a reason. She's a spy, right? She's doing this to get to the bottom of something, whether it's her own survival or whether it's the betterment of mutant supremacy or whatever. Yes, Velicia also does put on the trappings of the villain and the femme fatale, but it is not for a greater good. It is purely to put on the show of the villain. And thus, to kind of, you know, wrap up the rambling here, the interesting thing is that even though I'm showing Velicia specifically cosplaying as probably the least personality engaging version of Mystique, it's the one that fits her the most, because it is the femme fatale, the skin, the changing skin, which is a costume one wears to accomplish something. And even though Velicia is no freedom fighter or a survivor like Mystique, it is still a tool to achieve something. And I think that ultimately is the commonality between Velicia and Mystique. Alrighty, I'll go ahead and wrap up the ramblings there for today. Alright, you people know what to do. If you like what you've seen, want to see more, go ahead and tickle the sacred buttons. Go ahead and comment down below, because I want to hear your thoughts either on Mystique or Velicia or both. You know, and of course share the video, because it's good for the channel, it's good for the algorithm, it's good for you, it makes you feel good. I do want to remind you that I have a Patreon subscribe star that you can hit up if you want to see exclusive content, because I like making videos that are much more questionable, both in content and of course with the language I use. So if you want to check that out, definitely hit those up. And of course, if you wish to stalk me elsewhere on the interwebs, you can hit up my links here up on the screen. And of course, I always shout out to minds.com, which is the alternative website I post everything to, because it's a nice way to break up the hegemony and do your own version of freedom fighting. And so yes, with all that said, I thank you for spending this time with me. I do hope you all stick around. And until next time, deuces.